Okay, so same process as before. I'm going to take my denominator, x plus 1, and set it equal to 0. So we're going to get x is negative 1, right? So our domain in interval notation is negative infinity to negative 1, union negative 1 to infinity. And I sometimes feel like negative numbers are a little harder to see when it comes to the left and the right side. So if you fumble with it a little bit, just draw a number line. It's one of those things, like, I'd rather you get it right than not. So if you need a number line, go for it, right? So if this is negative 1, negative 2 would be over here, and 0 would be over here. But we're going to be working pretty much only with negative numbers as we go through this. So same as before, let's look at the left side, right? Left side, correct? Not right. I always say that. X, f of x. And let's look at what happens around this value. So we're going to be approaching negative 1 from the left-hand side. That's going to be going this way. So let's start with negative 2. That's negative 2 squared over negative 2 plus 1. So that's 4, but it's negative, so negative 4. Negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1, and that's just 4, okay? And then we've got, let's try negative 1.5. See how I said negatives always, it's helpful to see, negative 1.5. So negative 1.5 squared and negative 1.5 plus 1. So negative 1.5 squared, this is going to be ultimately negative, right? Negative 2.25 divided by negative 0.5. I can move those 2 decimal places over, but if I do, I have to move an extra one down here. So this would be negative and negative, so I can just drop them, right? 225 over 50. And that may not divide as cleanly as we want it to. Let me actually, if I just throw it on a calculator, I get 4.5. Okay. And then how about negative 1.1, right? That's a little closer. I can draw some of these in as we go. So that would be negative 1.1 squared divided by negative 1.1 plus 1 equal to negative, because the one out front, negative 1.21 divided by negative 0.1. Again, we'll just move them over, or you could just throw it on a calculator, I suppose. But this gives us positive 12.1. Okay. And then maybe negative 1.01. Again, that's closer in here, not drawn to scale, but negative 1.01 squared, negative, that's negative in there as well, 1.01 plus 1. So we get a negative 1.0201 divided by negative 0.01, which gives us 102.01, excuse me, 0.01. Let me just write that cleaner. Okay, so the question becomes, what happens as x approaches negative 1 from the left? Well, f of x seems to be going up, increasing. Again, we can highlight our function values here. We've got a 4, 4.5, a 12.1, a 102.01. So I would say approaches infinity or increases without bound, right? Again, so it's not always a guarantee that they disagree with each other. I mean, it happens. And sometimes it's useful in the beginning to see times where they disagree, but don't make that assumption. So if we do the right side of this, and we say x goes to negative 1 from the right side now, where is f of x going? So let's pick, I guess I hid my number line. I guess that was a bad idea, right? Just to the right side of -1. Again, I kind of want to match values. So maybe negative 0.99. So this gives us negative 0.9801 divided by 0.01. We get a negative 98.1. Okay, and then negative 0.9, so negative 0.9 squared, negative 0.9 plus 1. We get negative 0.81 divided by 0.1 negative 0.81. How about negative 0.5? Negative 0.5 squared, negative 0.5 plus 1. Negative 0.25 divided by 0.5 would take us to negative 0.125. And let's do not negative anything. How about just 0? So that would be 0 squared, I guess negative out front, and 0 plus 1. So top is 0, bottom is non-zero, which means we get 0. So again, remember, these sometimes the right side feels a little backwards because we are moving this direction. It's not even kind of a straight line. We're moving in this direction. Yeah, so we're actually asking what happens in this order. And feel free to adjust how you write it. If you want to write them in the other order, just so it follows closer to the first, that's fine too. I'm trying to make it look how it looks on a number line. So it looks to me like this is decreasing, and it has a pretty significant jump from here to here. So again, if you don't believe it, or if you need to see more, plot or plug in more points. Try negative 0.999 and see what you get. So f of x seems to be moving in the direction of negative infinity. So as x approaches -1 from the left, f of x is approaching infinity. And as x approaches -1 from the right, f of x seems to be approaching negative infinity. Okay?